All right, well, let's get started. It's 12:04. All right, so the first thing, I don't know if all of you were on when I mentioned this. I'm going to show you an example of how to make everything in the recipes that I provided to you, except for the meatballs. I did make the meatballs about a week and a half or so ago, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm not making them because I think I'm gonna make them for our team party next week. So we're gonna start out with the veggie bites. These are cool because I made these up and I was trying to figure out a recipe and I was looking online and there was really nothing online that sort of mimicked what I do. So you can make them however you really want to. I like to use whatever I have on hand. So we had so many Bill's parties last year and I have these friends who constantly brought like the big veggie tray. Every single Sunday, it seemed like we had a big veggie tray. So I would take all those veggies because, they're only good for so long. And I got sick of eating it. I just threw them in the food processor. So it didn't really matter what was in there other than, you could use cucumbers, but I don't usually cook much with cucumbers except in some like Asian dishes. So I would keep that out, especially because they're so liquidy. So what I did, what I had in the refrigerator at the time, you'd be like, why do you have this weird like mix of vegetables? So here is, I had some green pepper, I had some orange pepper, I had some carrots, I had some celery, I had some radishes, like really weird. But like I said, you can do anything with vegetables, especially in this recipe, it's very forgiving. So what I put in the directions here is probably about 3 to 4 cups of vegetables, depending on what you're using. I used carrots, so carrots don't hold a lot of water, and they are a little harder. So I will say that there wasn't quite as much liquid in here. So, but there was some, as you can see. So I wanted to make sure that I got as much liquid out as I could before making this dish. The reason being is it's going to be a really mushy mess if you don't, or you've got to add a lot more binder to it. Got to add probably an egg. You probably would need to add a ton of breadcrumbs or almond flour, whatever you would use to like kind of thicken it and make it stick together. So that is all the liquid that I had in the recipe or in the vegetables. So here is my mix. I threw it in the food processor. And with that, try and follow this recipe here. I'm going to add about a half a cup of breadcrumbs. I used half panko, half regular, just normal breadcrumbs. Dump that in there. About a half a cup of Parmesan or Romano cheese. You can add whatever cheese you want. If you want it to be not as healthy, you could add more to it. I felt like a lot of cheese. That's all right. And then we're going to do cream cheese. Got about a half of a block of cream cheese in here. And then we're going to add a little bit of salt. Again, I love using kosher salt. Bam, can just do that. I always grind my own pepper. Always, 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 always. That's why I'm so strong. I'm doing that all the time. And then I also have on here half a teaspoon of garlic powder or onion powder, or you can use fresh garlic, you can use fresh onion, whatever you have on hand. I'm just going to do a little bit of garlic powder and a little bit onion powder. I use granulated onion and granulated garlic. I don't use the powder or the salt typically. I like the granulated. I think it just has a stronger flavor. And we're just going to mix that up and not make a mess of the mess I already have on this counter. Mixing, 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 mixing. And again, when you're following this recipe, you do need to an extent, add a little bit more breadcrumbs or a little less breadcrumbs, depending on the vegetables you're using. So if you just have a bunch of Brussels sprouts, which I love in this recipe, chop up your Brussels sprouts just like in your food processor. And then you're going to want to add a little less breadcrumbs. It doesn't necessarily create as much water. It does a little bit, but not quite as much as the rest of the vegetables would, like especially celery. And you're just going to have kind of like a mush, right? I like to do, this is my handy dandy scooper. I have them in all shapes and sizes, maybe not shapes, but all sizes. And with this is how I make my meatballs, having everything uniform, especially when you're having a party, you want to do holiday appetizers, you want it to look nice, you want it to be as uniform as possible, and also you want it to cook it evenly. So I like to take my scoop, just throw that on there. You can take it out if you want to futz with it, roll it into a ball, smush it, make it look like a tater tot if you want to. Whatever you want to do, you can. You just continue to do that. And because I used some harder vegetables, because I have some radish in there, I've got carrots in there, it's probably going to take a little bit longer to cook than I have in the recipe. Typically, this would be for if you've got broccoli and cauliflower and maybe a few other, like a little bit of carrots and maybe some onion in there, it might not take quite as long, so you can follow the recipe and kind of play it by ear. If it seems really mushy, you may need a little bit more time. So something like this is the shape you want it to be. You don't want to be too mushy, but it should still be a little bit because you've got that cream cheese in there. And then you're going to put it in the oven. With the magic of television, you have your little appetizer. So they should turn out to be kind of like a little sort of almost a meatball. And they should be a little bit soft. The vegetables shouldn't be mushy though. They should just have a little bit of a bite to them. And again, it depends on what you're using. And then I like to put it with a dipping sauce. And I think I put it in here. Yep. So this is a honey mustard, kind of like a Chick-fil-A type sauce because it's delicious, not low in calories. I also like something called Country Sweet. It's so good. If you've never had it, I think they have it I know they have it at Wegmans. They might have it at Tops too. It comes in a hot variety. You know, I like my hot sauce. So that one is really good as a dipping sauce as well. You can use ranch. On occasion with these, if you want to see it one more time before I put it down. On occasion, I used to love making like veggie pizza, and that's like a cold veggie pizza on crescent rolls, and you put like mayo and cream cheese and ranch seasoning packet on it with all your little vegetables like that. So if you sort of want to mimic that in this little veggie bite, you could add a little bit of dried ranch flavoring to it as well, and that'll just give it a little bit of a different flavor. So that's another idea that you could do. So a few other notes I put in here. Again, Brussels sprouts is one of my favorites, but you can do it all broccoli. You could do it all cauliflower. I used to, when their fad was to make cauliflower pizza crust, and I used to make little cauliflower bites like this. Very, very similar, except you may not want to use cream cheese. You can just use an egg with some cheese, like mozzarella or something like that. You can also add additional protein. So if you wanted to make these non-vegetarian, you could add ground chicken to them. You could add something different to change the flavor. It'll just make it a little bit, obviously, harder. And you would have to make sure you cook it through. I also put in here that you could throw in beans. So I love to make like a veggie bean burger. And I sort of make it similar, except I don't use the cream cheese. But you can throw other vegetables in it. You may need a little bit more of a binder like the breadcrumbs because it will be very, very mushy. So you may need something else to bind it or a little bit extra to bind it if you do use black beans or any other beans you may have in your pantry. Questions on that one? All right. Again, this is great leftovers. And again, freeze it. I like to flash freeze things. So let's say these are cooked. What I would do is I would put down some wax paper and I would put the cooked veggie bites on there. Same for meatballs, same for, I make these like little stuffed potato balls, mashed potato balls and things like that. I will put them on there and I'll throw them in my freezer on a cookie sheet when I have room in my freezer. And then I'll flash freeze them for maybe an hour or so. So then you can just throw them in a bag and they don't stick together. So I do that all the time when I make homemade pierogies and things like that. I flash freeze them, then throw them in a bag to make it easier for storage, and then they don't stick together. All right, next one. All right, this is a mess. This is one of my favorites, and it was so easy, and I don't know what made me make them, but I've been making them for years. And this would be the little zucchini things. They're so easy. And like I mentioned in the recipe, and Lynn mentioned that you can use other vegetables as well. So if you have yellow squash, if you have eggplant, work great. I don't know what else you could use, but those would probably be the main ones that are going to hold their shape for you. So with these, what I did was I took zucchini, cut them, obviously in about this one was a little more than a 1/4 inch, but if somewhere around a 1/4 inch, hopefully you guys can see that. And I'm going to show you a really easy tip to get things done quicker, especially because this is all about appetizers. You're probably making them in bulk. If you're having a holiday party, Bill's party, whatever, you're probably making quite a few. So a time-saving tip, make your homemade sauce is in the recipe, which I did. So I use the tomato paste sauce, which I love because it's so thick and it doesn't water down anything. It's a great sauce to use on pizzas because I hate watery pizza and I hate when you pick up a piece of pizza and it just like hangs there. So doing this helps the crust to stay a little more crispy, keeping a thicker sauce. So I just used a couple cans of tomato paste. I like the no salt added. It's better for you. Plus then you can control the amount of salt you use. I also have to have a little sweetener in my sauces. So I tend to use agave syrup. And you can use whatever you want. You can use sugar if you'd like, or balsamic vinegar or something like that. So what I did with this, I pulled out my millions of little handy dandy pastry bags, and I put the a good chunk of the tomato paste pizza sauce in the pastry bag. And I do this with a lot of things. If I'm doing little stuffed jalapenos or stuffed peppers, deviled eggs, really anything that you need to be a little bit more precise and something that's not, obviously you can't have something liquidy or mushy. So what I like to do, just put a layer of sauce on there. And imagine you're doing a ton of these. Look how easy it is. And you're sort of like a pastry chef now. So you're gonna do that. And really, it's a pizza. So you can do whatever you want, any toppings. I have cheese, obviously. A little mix of different cheeses here. And then if you were on my first episode of virtual cooking, olive tapenade. And this is just a mixture of different types of olives and capers and a little bit of, just a tiny bit of lemon zest. So this will make it a vegetarian little pizza. And obviously I can't just leave it alone. I need to put something on it. So I'm going to do a little bit of oregano on the top. And that's it. I mean, it's so easy. The zucchini itself, you basically just need to cut it into slices, simple, throw it on a cookie sheet. I usually like to just broil it, or you can grill it. If you want to just throw it on your grill, I've got a Blackstone. I would probably just throw it on there because it's quicker, easier, and it's a large space or a large surface. So you can cook those a couple minutes each side because you still want it, you know, kind of thick and you want it to have a little bit of a bite to it still. So do that. And then you're going to want to top it. and then pop it back in the oven. So you're going to pop it back in the oven for really however long you want. I believe in the recipe I had just a few minutes, but it depends on your toppings and how like deep and dark and cooked you'd like it. So let me show you what these look like. Picture looks prettier because I didn't use pepperoni. The top two, or the bottom two now. I'm just showing my laptop. The bottom two here, that's the one that I made a little different, and I'll tell you what I did. All I did was I took that ground chicken and I cooked it up, you know, with my regular seasonings, salt, pepper, whatever. And then I added a couple scoops of the tomato paste to it and a little bit of Romano cheese, mixed it all together, put a layer of that on your zucchini, and then topped it with cheese and a little bit of panko breadcrumbs. So it gives it kind of the chicken Parmesan feel with the breadcrumbs on the top. And then, you know, have to garnish. So there's a little bit of parsley on top because my basil plant is dead. So I'm gonna get that working again. Any questions on that so far? All right, so the only other serving ideas I had here, again, you're treating
Shannon?
it like a pizza. Yeah.
I do have a quick question.
Yes. Sure.
So when you're using that tomato paste, are you adding anything into that?
Yes. So on the
Is
same
that the
page,
agave? Yeah.
so
Okay.
on the same page here, the easy pizza sauce.
Oh, right there.
so
Yes, I see it.
Yep. So I have the 12-ounce thing on there. These are the halfers. So I had, everybody has these, probably the little ones. So you can just get 2 of the little ones or just use 1 depending on how many you're making. That freezes really well though, so you may as well just make the whole batch. You're gonna add oregano, garlic powder. You can definitely add your own fresh garlic too. A little bit of olive oil. Love olive oil. It just makes the flavor heftier and has a nice olivey flavor. Just a little bit of vinegar. I use balsamic vinegar just to give it a little bit of just that vinegary note, kind of balances it a little bit, and then salt and pepper. And that's it. It's so easy. You don't cook it or anything because it's going to cook on your pizzas.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so other ideas on toppings. So obviously I said put whatever toppings you want as your standard style pizza, or you can recreate your own. So I have on here ideas on do a buffalo chicken. Think of zucchini, it's not a super flavorful vegetable, so you can almost do any type of topping and it'll fit well. The zucchini won't overpower the taste of everything else. So if you want to do buffalo chicken or meat lovers, just add different types of meats on there. Veggie lovers, Greek, you could do something with feta. When I show you the next little appetizer, you'll see that you can use a lot of these items and sort of overlap them. Hawaiian pizza, so just add a little ham and pineapple with your regular cheese. I would top it with a little bit of barbecue sauce though, instead of tomato sauce. Mexican, obviously you could put a little salsa or a little taco sauce or something on there, depending on what you like. Cheese, meat, top it with a little avocado, delicious. Stuffed pepper. So I have actually done a little bit of like stuffed pepper, like lazy stuffed peppers, where you have the rice and the peppers on there and just add a little cheese and put that on top. Cheeseburger, steak, meatball parm. You pretty much can put anything on the top of these, excuse me, and it'll be delicious. Any other questions on that? All right, so I'll talk a little bit about the meatballs, but again, we're not making those today. Plus, I didn't think I would have enough time to do all of these, but I wanted to make sure you had like a wide variety of different holiday appetizers if you decide to do any of them. So this one is nice because it's different, right? It's nice for the holidays, and you probably don't want to do them for Thanksgiving because you might have a big turkey to eat. Who wants turkey meatballs? But I'm thinking maybe around other holidays, Christmas time, something like that, or whatever holidays you celebrate. And the turkey meatballs are something a little bit different. So you still have that really nice meatball, but it has a sweet cranberry sauce with it. So I played around with this recipe because again, it's really hard for me to figure out the quantities of different things to put in here. So I liked the amount that was in here, other than if you do not really like the strong flavor of sage or poultry seasoning, you can lessen the amount that's in here. I have fresh sage that I grow because I love the taste. So I actually added just a tablespoon of fresh sage, but it did really create a heavy sage flavor. So it did taste like your Thanksgiving turkey. So you can skip that, or you can just maybe even put just a little bit of poultry seasoning in there. So I wouldn't do a half tablespoon. I would just do just maybe a quarter teaspoon or so of poultry seasoning, or maybe like a half teaspoon, because you don't want it to overpower. So a few things, a few notes on these meatballs. You can use ground turkey. You can use ground chicken. Like I said, I tend to grind my own meat unless I have someone else do it because I got lazy. I like to add a little dark meat to white, so it gives it a little bit more flavor. It adds a little bit of fat to it, but it also adds flavor to it. So if you do end up having extra meat, you can always grind that up or ask a butcher to do it for you. Here's a few other meatball ideas because I had meatball palooza at my house once. I don't know, my husband and I were just bored. It was winter, and I always have to find things to do in the winter. I go stir crazy. And we just made like 8 different types of meatballs. So I made like curry meatballs, ramen meatballs, Greek meatballs with lamb and beef, and all sorts of different things. So there are so many different varieties that you can make. Think about every stuffed burger you see advertised, or any type of sandwich you see out there. Trust me, you could probably make it into a meatball. So, if you'd like to experiment, have a little bit of fun, I did put some ideas on there. I made these chicken piccata meatballs, so they had lemon and capers, and I actually breaded the outside with panko. Amazing. So really, the sky's the limit on things like that. I've also tried vegetarian meatballs, so the eggplant style, and they're really good. So I did put a link to one of the recipes out there. This is not necessarily the one I used, but it's very similar. I've also tried to make almond meatballs, and I know that sounds crazy, but you use regular almonds and you grind them up, and you can actually make meatballs with it. And this is great for those who don't eat meat and who have gluten allergies or dairy, any other allergies out there besides almonds. It's a great alternative. So if you're looking for something funky and different, I can also get you the recipe for that. It's pretty good, different, but pretty good. Any questions on the meatballs? Alrighty, so here's a fun one. Wait. All right, guys. Like I said, I can mess with everything here. So we're gonna do the little sushi bites. All right, here we go. So in the recipe, I gave you a couple different options, actually a few different options on what you can do with these. And these are so much fun because they do taste like sushi and they are easy. Rolling sushi is not the easiest thing to do, and it's messy and it's frustrating unless you do it all the time. I have made it a couple times and it's not the most fun thing in the world for me to do. So this is the easy, fun way to do it. Move all that over. All right, so what you're going to do is you are going to do similar to what you did with the zucchini. You're going to have cut about that much. I like to make them pretty, so I do peel them to make the little pretty stripes on there. So you're going to put that down here. I also made a sriracha mayo. So this is QP mayonnaise. It's Japanese mayonnaise. You don't have to use this. You can use Hellmann's or whatever you'd like. I like this. It's heavier in yolk content, and it just has a bit of a different flavor. And because we're making sushi, I'm trying to make it as traditional as I can. So this is Kewpie mayo. You can get it at Wegmans or Tops. It's in the Asian department. Also, handy dandy sriracha. Sriracha has a kind of a unique flavor to it. So I don't usually use my own homemade hot sauce with this. I used sriracha, again, trying to make it a little bit more traditional sushi flavor. And I mixed them up really to taste. So if you don't like things too hot, don't put too much. If you want it real hot, you probably will have it a darker color, more like this. And what you're going to do, and this is if you're not putting the rice on it, so this is just the standard base recipe. I'm just going to put a little bit on the bottom here. See that? So just put a little bit on the bottom. And then with this one, so what I did was I included a sushi rice recipe, but essentially it's just a sticky rice. Sticky rices are usually like the shorter grain rice. I had jasmine rice in my fridge. I'm like, let's give it a try. It'll work fine. So what I did was I heated it up a little bit. I added a little rice wine vinegar, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of white sugar to it. That's kind of the more traditional sushi method because it adds a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of sourness. And then what I did was I took plastic wrap and I just smushed the rice down and I threw it in the freezer for about an hour because I want it to be as cold as possible so I can cut it with this cute little cookie cutter. Let me see if I have this in view for y'all. All right, so this is rice. We're going to take this cute little cookie cutter. Bam. Get that. And you're going to put that right on top. Actually, we're going to do this too. We want it to stick. So we're going to do the mayo on the top of there. I'm going to put the little sushi on top. And then what else do you like on your sushi? So I don't like salmon. I like almost everything in the world, but I hate salmon. So I would say you can get the smoked salmon or the thin salmon at the store and just put a little bit on top and you can have salmon sushi, or you can buy ahi grade tuna or salmon, whatever you'd like. Or you go the easy route and you do the California roll style. You get some imitation crab, you put that on the top there. Again, the one that I'm not using rice, same thing. Just going to put the little bit of imitation crab on top. And then obviously sushi has to have avocado on it, especially a California roll. So we're going to do that on the top of both. And I wish I had a napkin. And then I'm just going to drizzle just a little bit more of this. Stick on there. And then I love the kind of salty umami flavor of soy sauce. So I could not just leave it plain like this. So what I did was I just drizzled a little bit of soy sauce on there. And this soy sauce is a little bit thicker than what you're going to get in the store normally. So I go to the Asian market and I buy this brand. It's a deeper, thicker, it's like a mushroom soy. It doesn't taste like mushrooms whatsoever. It's just a little bit thicker, heavier, dark soy sauce, so it has more intense flavor to it. It's so good. And then, handy dandy, beautiful toasted sesame seeds. And you're just going to sprinkle that on top. And do it prettier than what I just did. And then you're going to have mixture of different ones. And again, if you have salmon, you can make an assortment. You can do a salmon, you could do ahi tuna, except it's very expensive. And then you can do imitation crab. You can also do veggie and just skip the crab altogether. The rice is fun because it really was easy to do. And again, just using the cookie cutter. Look at that. So easy. And it looks so fun and pretty, right? And then it really does taste like sushi. I ate like 3 of them before we started. I'm gonna try it. So good. Any questions on that? Right. Let me just see what other little notes I put on here. Oh, if you like nori, which is the seaweed layer in sushi, sometimes it's on the outer edge, sometimes it's in the inner under the rice portion of sushi. You can add that too, and it's like a thin sheet, so you could literally cut it into circles and put it on here as well. Sometimes it can be a little overpowering, so just make sure that you taste it before you put it on all your appetizers to make sure it doesn't ruin it. I've had nori that I've purchased that has been really good, but I've also had some that just was really, really, really oceany. It was kind of harsh and I couldn't even eat it. So just be careful with that. But it is an option if you want to add that almost like 100% true sushi feel. You can do that as well. A couple other things I put on here. If you don't like seafood, you can try putting a little bit of cream cheese on the bottom and then just top it with tomato, avocado, and feta. So again, using some of the items that we used in the other recipes here. And then obviously put here, think about all your favorite sushi styles. So you could put shrimp on there. You could put breaded shrimp on there. You could put calamari on there. You could put sweet potato on there. I love sweet potato sushi. It's like sweet potatoes tempura in your sushi. Do that. You can really recreate any of it without having to roll the actual sushi. All right. Any questions on that? I'm just whipping through these. This is really, really versatile. And it's nice because these little tortilla cups that I'm going to show you, you can really put anything in them, savory or sweet. So you could make little tiny desserts out of them. You could make savory appetizers out of them, or really both, depending on what you're looking at or looking for. So with these, I show 2 examples in the recipe. So this is the one that I made, which I haven't, I had made today as well. And then this one is more like the Mexican version. So with this, I used a little bit of taco meat at the bottom, avocado. I believe there was a little bit of salsa or maybe a pico de gallo, which is a little bit heavier so it doesn't make the bottom all soggy. Unfortunately, most salsas are a little wet, so they could ruin the actual tortilla shell itself. So just be careful on what you're putting in there from a wetness standpoint, or they will not last long. Some people probably could put a little bit of cheese on the bottom and cook it, so that'll create almost like a little barrier so it doesn't get soggy. But again, then you're adding calories. So we want to really try and keep it a little healthier. All right, so I made these beforehand, but I want to show you how easy it is to make tart pans. Lots and lots of tart pans. So I like this huge one. You could really take 2 huge burrito tortilla shells, the flour ones, and fill this up. And in the recipe, I put in there to create like little circles, because obviously that's going to be the prettiest. You're going to create a little circle with your tortilla shells and stick them in your tart pan. So you're going to fill each opening with the little circles of tortilla, or you're going to do it the lazy way like I do, because I hate tedious work. What you're going to do is you're just going to take any piece of tortilla that you have. It doesn't matter what the shape is, and you're going to just throw them in your cups. Pretend these are raw. And put them in your cups here. You know, some are squares, some are rectangle. Makes them look rustic. Great. And you're just going to stick it in there, and then you're going to throw it in the oven. Just watch it, because depending on your oven, depending on the tart pan that you're using, it could cook really quick, or it might need a little extra time depending on where it is in your oven. The grossest thing is tortillas that are just a little overcooked. They do not taste good. Some things taste pretty good burnt, these do not. So just make sure you watch them. So very easy. Again, I will create like 2 or 3 of these full, and I'll just throw them in a bag. You can freeze them. You just gotta be careful because they might break. So you don't want to smush them anywhere. They'll probably stay in your pantry for weeks. I mean, tortilla shells don't always feel like they ever go bad. I feel like I could have them for a year and they're still fresh, although I haven't. Just seems like that. So you can make a ton of them ahead of time and just keep them in your freezer or keep them in your pantry for when you need to pull them out and use them. So then you're like, oh my God, I've got these wonderful like little cups. I can do anything with them. Yep, but this is really one of the most fun and so tasty. It's kind of like a Greek salad in a little tortilla cup. So again, pastry bags are your friend. Makes your life easier, keeps your fingers from getting all messy trying to put things in a little cup. So I have hummus in here. So what I'm going to do with this, and any flavor works, whatever you want, I'm just going to squeeze a little bit in the middle there. Been sitting on my counter for a little bit, so it's a little mushy. So you're going to have that. Just a little bit of hummus in each of these little cups. Then the next level, which I did include a little recipe for, this is something I made up, so you can sort of taste it as you go because it's fine to eat it as you go. I like to let it sit for a little while because I want the flavors to blend. But what you can use is you can just use tomato, or you can use tomato and cucumber being more of a Mediterranean feel. I thought it tastes really good in these cups. So I just chopped up some Roma tomatoes, cucumber, a small bell pepper, maybe just a few pieces. It doesn't have to be a huge pepper. And then I added 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. I like red wine vinegar when I do Mediterranean. I just feel like it tastes good and it looks pretty in this mashup, I should say. And then if it's not sweet, if you like something a little sweeter, I do again add a little bit of agave or honey. If you like honey, it does change the flavor slightly. And then a teaspoon of garlic and onion powder. And then I will add a little salt and pepper just to taste. So you've got yourself sort of like a little Greek sort of salsa or pico de gallo. I tend to add other things than I put in this recipe. I might add a little dried mint. I might add a little dried dill, mint, and oregano, depending. So in here I do have that added because I like a little bit of a stronger herby flavor. So you can do that as well. And what you're going to do is just take a few pieces of each, and you're going to just dump them right into your little cups here. And I'm going to just put a little, try and make them match, make them look pretty. And if you're doing a ton at a time, it's really not hard. You can make it a little bit smaller. I was up last night doing all this prep work, so I was like just done. At one point at 9 o'clock, I'm like, I'm sick of chopping. This is as good as it's gonna get. So I'm gonna chop all those up and put them in the little cups here. Should get another cucumber in that one. So it's gonna look like this. And then, what else is good on Greek food? Maybe a little bit of feta cheese. So I don't add a lot, just a little bit, and this adds a little salt to your dish too. And I'm making them in the tart shells because it's going to look messy when I make them. And then I can just take them out and put them on a pretty white plate and no one would think I made a mess. All about plating sometimes when you're having, at least during that, like the holidays, when you're having friends over, to make things a little bit prettier. Now, because there's this now because the feta's in there and feta's pretty salty, and depending on the hummus you're using, it could be a little salty too. I have an olive tamponade hummus in there, so it's a little more salty. You can put Kalamata olives on top. Again, Greek olives give that more the Mediterranean feel, but I wanted something a little more subdued and not quite as salty. So I just have black olives. And again, you could use it on your little pizzas if you want. So you're just going to put 1 or 2 olives on the top of each. And then you're going to plate them. Imagine the plate bigger. You've got your little Greek cups. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you can make them non-vegetarian. Um, I like lamb, so you could put a little bit of maybe brown lamb in there, or you could put a little piece of if you've got sliced lamb or a roast or something, you could use that. You could use if you've got gyro meat, the kind of the flat meat that you can get. I know they have it in the supermarket. I bought it last at Trader Joe's. It's like flat. It's a mix of different meats on it. You could take a little strip of it and put that in there as well to give it that gyro flavor. So we can do that. Or you could also use these cups again for really anything. So if we look at the recipes again, I like the Greek ones because I feel like always been a crowd pleaser as long as you like hummus. I have a friend that doesn't, so she hates them, but everyone else seems to really like them. You can add a little red onion if you'd like. I don't usually use a lot of onion because onion doesn't like me. Raw onion does not like me. But you can put a little bit of raw onion on there. I think that would look really pretty, red onion or scallions, whatever you have. Tzatziki. So I love tzatziki, and you could definitely put a little bit on the top of here as well. And I have done that in the past. I usually make my own, but you can also buy it in the store. I've seen it pretty much everywhere these days. So you could put just a tiny little dollop on there and then put the olive on top of that. And that'll make it look really pretty too. And they're so small that they are really good for like one bite. You want to make sure that they're not too big where, you take one bite and everything falls out all over the place, all over your floor probably if you're having a party. So you don't want that. So try and make them as small as you possibly can. So again, you can use them for sweet appetizers. So you can put a little dollop of pudding in there, a little whipped cream, any type you want. You can make little tiny like lemon meringue tarts or coconut cream or chocolate or little apple pie tarts, whatever you want. Think about it being a pie shell and then go from there. Oh, breakfast cups. So I have done this before for Bills games. So when you're tailgating in the morning, you want something fun and easy for people to eat because you want them to eat, not, you want them to last through the game because there's definitely probably going to be drinking involved. You can put like little breakfast tarts together. So if you want to put a little scrambled eggs in there, a little bit of sausage, bacon, if you want to do like a Mexican omelet style, you can just put that in the bottom as well. Little pieces, top it with a little bit of cheese. Delicious, one bite little breakfast tarts. Pulled pork. Pulled pork's great too for a little appetizer. So if you have, I tend to make pulled pork like a huge amount and then I freeze it in individual serving size packages. And I'll take that out. You can put that in like the little cup. You can top it with really whatever you want, coleslaw. You could top it with pineapple, onion, whatever you want. I think the sky's the limit on something like that. And I do have grilled pineapple on there. Steak, peppers, and onions. So I have done this too, where you can just put steak, peppers, onions, a little bit of provolone cheese on top just to keep it all in there. Chicken, spinach, sauteed mushrooms. I do like to do sauteed mushrooms with a little bit of goat cheese. Just heat it at the end into it with a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Put that in the cup as well. That's really good. And then, of course, the Mexican style always works too. So using some of the components that you have here in all of your recipes helps because then you're not spending quite as much money. You use cucumber here, tomato here, you use cucumbers here. So really using all of your ingredients to the most is so important, especially with the grocery prices these days. Very important. Any questions on that? Guys, I feel like I'm talking to myself. Yes, Kathy.
I have another question. So when you do your pita, do you like spray them with like olive oil or before you put them in the oven to get
Nope,
that
I don't.
crispiness out of them? Or
No,
do you think, no, you don't do
no.
that? Okay.
They actually will crisp up without any. So I tend to use a lot of cooking spray for like the veggie bites, definitely, because you don't want them sticking. Um, I usually use parchment paper too, and sometimes I'll still spray it a little bit with those veggie bites. Sometimes the moisture goes into it and they stick a little bit. The tortillas, so you can use tortillas. I've also used pita. So the pita are obviously thicker, so they might be a little bit more difficult. They're a little heavier as well, and they will need to cook a little bit longer. I would stay away from corn tortillas because the corn, while I have made lots of homemade corn tortilla chips baked, they have like a weird kind of texture to them. So when you bite into it, it's like it's a funky texture, and I would not suggest making these out of them. I'd like to say it's like biting into like, I don't know. It's just strange. Just stay away from it for the cups. So use flour. In the picture here, I bought wraps one time. I don't know if you can tell in the bottom picture. Uh, Finger in the way.
Hmm.
Easy. So on the bottom picture, I used green. That was like a spinach wrap, and then I used a tomato wrap, and just add some color and a little bit of flavor too. So you can use like anything. Those flatbread type things, you probably could use that. Um, if you can't have gluten, there's other alternatives there. I know they have all the gluten-free things that you could use. Cooking times are going to be drastically different depending on what you're using. So I don't think like the egg ones would be very good for this Greek one, but I know they have like the cheese ones and different almond flour based gluten-free ones that you could probably use.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you guys. If you do have any questions or, if you're going to attempt to make something and something is not working, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help at any time. Or if you're looking for any other ideas, if you go to the nutrition site, I believe I included a link in the email appointment. There's another appetizer that I love. I think I talked about it in one of our last, oh no, I didn't. There's an appetizer that I love. You use endive, Belgian endive, which is, if you look on the site, you'll be able to see it. It's like a little part of like the lettuce family, but it's heavier and it's almost like a little petal. And you could use that as a fun appetizer either for dips, or you could also use it to fill. So take a look at that as well. That's a really cool appetizer that you're probably never going to see anyone make for you. And we make them all the time. Like we'll just sit here and I'll make them for a snack. They're good, they're hearty, they're low cal, and they're really tasty and I think impressive. So take a look at that. And there's some other recipes on there too. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Shannon. Great
Thanks, Shannon.
presentation as always.